Alrighty, guys, I once again went 4-2 of my 6 personal sports bets on my website yesterday. And the only way you could have accessed all of my personal plays is to be a board member on that site. Before we talk a little bit more about that, just want to take a quick time out and welcome you to our college basketball video here today for Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. Happy hump day to you. Weekend's right around the corner. My name is Brock Page. I've been doing sports picks for free on YouTube since 2016. I also sell my personal plays on patreon.com/BrockPage. And once again, guys, I went 4-2 of my 6 personal bets on that site yesterday. And the only way you could have accessed all 6 of those personal plays is to be a board member on that site. Board members get access to every single personal play, every single package, every single day for the next 30 days. The math works out to be just $1.66 a day, cheaper than your daily cup of coffee. Most other handicappers, they're going to charge a couple $100 just for a day or two of service, so it's certainly good value for you. Now, you may be wondering what the difference is between what I do here on YouTube and what I do on my website. Well, what I do here on YouTube is I'll handicap the entire slate of games in any given sport, side and total. What I do on my website is I actually share with you which one of these personal plays, which one of these free plays, on these videos that I'm actually betting on personally. Now, I currently have over 540 members who are signed up and active on my site right now. With that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some free content. We're going to take a look at Ole Miss taking on Florida, 6:30 p.m. East. Florida's the 9-point favorite at home, totals 137. Now, the Gators are playing some really tough defense in Gainesville. They're giving up just 63 points a game at home, and they're limiting their opponents to just 38% shooting from the field there. Big Colin Castleton, he has a staggering 75 blocks on this season, along with 23 steals. Now, Castleton's also the team's leading scorer with 16.5 points a game. Meanwhile, Will Richards, he's knocking down nearly 41% of his three-pointers. Now, they're facing an Ole Miss team who lost 6 out of their last 8 on the road. The Rebels are also arguably the worst offensive team on the road in the SEC. Ole Miss scores just 63 points a game in their travels. Now, total-wise, the Rebels saw 5 out of their last 8 road games stay under the number. Meanwhile, Florida's 60% to the under for the entire season. I'm going to lean toward the Gators, -9, under 137. Next contest, we're going to stay in the SEC. Everybody's got eyes on this one tonight. I'm talking about Alabama at Tennessee, 7 o'clock Eastern showdown. Tennessee's -3, totals 147. Now, the Vols play the toughest defense in the country. They're holding their opponents to just 33% shooting from the field at home. They're also allowing just 53 points a game in the Thompson Bowling Arena. Santiago Vescovi has 44 steals and a couple of blocks on the year. He's also the team's leading scorer on offense. And speaking of offensive production, Zakai Ziegler and Olivier Camhois, they've averaged double-digit points a game themselves. And they're facing a Bama team who's arguably the worst defensive rebounding team in the SEC. They also failed to cover recently in 3 out of their last 6 ball games. Failures to cover against the likes of LSU, Oklahoma, and Mississippi State. Now, injury-wise, Charles Bediako is questionable for the Tide. When it comes to the total, Bama saw unders in 6 out of their last 8. Meanwhile, Tennessee saw unders against the likes of Vandy, Auburn, and Florida. I'm going to lean toward Tennessee, -3, under 147. Next contest, Virginia Tech at Georgia Tech, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Virginia Tech's -7.5, totals 141 and a hook. Now, I'm not sure the Hokies are good enough on the road to cover this number here. They lost 6 of 7 while traveling, and they're scoring only 69 points a game in those contests. Now, the Hokies have also been little threat shooting it from three-land. They make only 29% of their three-pointers away from Blacksburg. Now, they're facing a Georgia Tech team who does a nice job guarding the three ball themselves. The Yellow Jackets limit their competition to just 28% shooting from three-land at home. Javon Franklin, he has 36 blocks and 28 steals. He's also averaging nearly double-digit points a game. Meanwhile, teammate Miles Kelly, he averages over 12.5 points a game himself. When it comes to the total in this one, the Yellow Jackets saw their last 6 straight all stay under the line. They're also 67% to the under in all of their conference games. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech, they saw 6 out of their last 10 meetings with Georgia Tech stay under the total. So if you're into historical trends, plenty of unders to go around. I'm going to lean toward Georgia Tech plus 7.5, keeping this one close, under 141 and a hook. Next game, Virginia at Louisville, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Virginia is the 16-point favorite on the road, totals 127. The Cavaliers are playing some of the toughest defense in the country. These guys allow just 60 points a game, and they're arguably the best defensive rebounding team in the ACC. Armaan Franklin, he has 22 steals and double-digit blocks. He also leads the team in points. Meanwhile, Reese Beekman, he scores double-digit points a game himself. He's also drilling 42% of his three-pointers. Now, they're facing a Louisville team who has just 3 wins on the year, and they lost 9 out of their last 10 meetings with Virginia. As a matter of fact, in those 10 head-to-head meetings, the Cardinals were held to just 59 points per contest. Now, total-wise, Louisville is 9-5 to the under in the KFC Yum Center. Meanwhile, Virginia saw unders recently against the likes of NC State, Syracuse, and Florida State. I'm going to lean toward Virginia minus 16, under 127. Next matchup, we're going to stay in the ACC. I'm talking about Florida State squaring off against Clemson. That'll be a 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Clemson's minus 9.5, totals 146 and a hook. Now, Clemson's got a crew of really good shooters. They're making 48% of their field goals at home, and they're in the top 3 in the country in shooting from the stripe. Hunter Tyson makes 84% of his free throws. He's also leading the team in points and rebounds. And speaking of scoring, P.J. Hall and Chase Hunter, they both average over 14 points a game respectively. They're taking on a Florida State team who lost 5 of 8 on the road, and they have just a .400 win percentage in conference play. When it comes to defensive play, the Noles are giving up nearly 77 points a game in their travels. Now, total-wise, 5 out of Florida State's last 8 road games did get over the number. Meanwhile, Clemson's 60% to the over for the entire season. I'm going to lean toward Clemson minus 9.5, over 146 and a hook. Next matchup, little Big East action. Xavier at Marquette, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Marquette's minus 5, totals 161. Now, Marquette's been real tough to beat in the Fiserv Forum. They're 13-1 on their home court. They're also a top 25 scoring team. Matter of fact, the Golden Eagles are making 50% of their shots from the field this year. They're actually in the top 5 in the country in that category. Oso Ighodaro makes 65% of his attempts from the field. He's also averaging nearly a dozen points a game. Meanwhile, Cam Jones is scoring over 15 points a night himself. Now, they're facing a Xavier team who hasn't played good enough defense on the road. They allow 80 points a game in their travels, and they failed to cover in 5 out of their last 7 contests. Now, injury-wise, Sully Boom is questionable for the Musketeers. Zach Freemantle's still out. When it comes to the total, Xavier's 72% to the over for the whole year. Meanwhile, Marquette's 10-4 to the over on their own court. I'm going to lean toward Marquette minus 5, over 161. Next contest, back into the SEC. I'm talking about Kentucky at Mississippi State, 8:30 p.m. East. Now, Mississippi State's minus 3 at home, totals 128. And the Bulldogs did win their last 5 straight, and they've been pretty tough to beat in the Humphrey Coliseum. They're 10-3 in front of their home crowd, and they hold their opponents to just 57 points a game there. Matter of fact, the Bulldogs are in the top 5 in the entire country in fewest points allowed per game. Now, Shaquille Moore, he has 46 steals and a handful of blocks. He's also the team's second leading scorer. And speaking of points, Tolu Smith, he averages over 14.5 points a game. Now, they're facing a Kentucky team who lost 4 of 7 as the road team. When it comes to offensive production, the Wildcats are scoring just 69 points a game in their travels. Now, injury-wise, C.J. Frederick and Xavier Wheeler, They're both questionable for Kentucky. And when it comes to the total in this one, the Wildcats saw unders recently against the likes of Vandy and Tennessee. Meanwhile, Mississippi State went 9-4 to the under in their last 13 at home. I'm going to lean toward Mississippi State -3, under 128. Next ball game, little Big Ten action. I'm talking about Indiana at Northwestern, 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Indiana's -2, totals 134. And as good as Indy's been over the past month or so, they still have a losing record on the road. The Hoosiers are also being held to just 67 points a game in their travels. They're facing a Northwestern team who's very tough to score against. They're currently in the top 10 in the country in defensive field goal percentage at home. They also limit their opponents to just 58 points a game in the Welsh Ryan Arena. Chase Audige has 62 steals on the season and 18 blocks. He's also the team's second leading scorer. Meanwhile, Boo Booey's dropping nearly 17 points a night offensively. When it comes to the injury report, Julian Roper is still questionable for the Wildcats. Race Thompson questionable for Indy. When it comes to the total, Indy went 6-3 to the under in their last 9. Meanwhile, Northwestern 67% to the under in their own building. I'm going to lean toward Northwestern +2, under 134. Next contest, it is going to be TCU at Iowa State, 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Iowa State's -4, totals 134.5. Now, the Cyclones have been tough to score against in the Hilton Coliseum. They allow just 54 points a game in front of their own fans. And aside from being a dominant 12-1 at home this year, they're also in the top 15 in defensive boards. Caleb Grills is snagging a handful of boards a game. He's also averaging double-digit points per contest. Meanwhile, teammate Jaron Holmes, he scores 13.5 points a night himself. He's also knocking down nearly 40% of his three-pointers. Now, they're facing a TCU squad on the other side who's on a 3-game skid. They play just .500 basketball against Big 12 opponents. And when these guys travel, well, bad things happen defensively. The Horned Frogs are allowing nearly 77 points a game away from campus. Now, injury-wise, Ball, Lampkin, and Miles are all questionable for TCU. When it comes to the total, TCU saw overs recently against the likes of Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and Mississippi State. They also saw 6 out of their last 10 meetings with Iowa State get over the total. So once again, if you're into historical trends, certainly want to think about that one there. Give me Iowa State -4, over 134.5. Next game, it is going to be Arkansas at Texas A&M, 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Texas A&M's -3, totals 141. Now, the Aggies are on a 3-game winning streak, and they also got the W in 8 out of their last 10. Now, the Aggies have also been nearly perfect in Reed Arena. They're 12-1 in front of their own fans, and they're limiting their competition to just 38% shooting from the field there. Will Taylor has 43 steals on the year and a couple of blocks. He's also leading the team in points. When it comes to scoring in this one, Tyrese Radford's averaging over 13.5 points a game himself. Now, they're facing an Arkansas team on the other side who actually lost 5 out of their last 7 as the road team. As a matter of fact, the Razorbacks are playing just .500 basketball against conference opponents. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, Arkansas is giving up 74 points a game in their travels. When it comes to the number, the Razorbacks saw 3 out of their last 4 ball games get over the total. Meanwhile, Texas A&M, they saw overs against the likes of Auburn, Kentucky, and this very Arkansas team. I'm going to lean toward Texas A&M -3, over 141. Next matchup I have for you, it is going to be Boise State taking on Colorado State. That'll be a 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Boise State's -3, totals 138. And even though they are favored by a bucket on the road, the Broncos have had some problems covering the point spread. They failed to cover in 4 out of their last 5. And they're scoring only 67 points a game in their travels. Now, they're facing a Colorado State team who does score a good amount of points at home. As a matter of fact, the Rams are averaging 78 points a game in the Moby Arena. They're also making nearly 50% of their field goal attempts on their home court as well. Isaiah Stevens, he's scoring over 18.5 points a game. and he's also making nearly 40% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, John Tanji, he's averaging over 13.5 points a night himself. When it comes to the scoring, Colorado State's gone 75% to the under in their own building. Meanwhile, Boise State went 7-3. Timeout. We're not making a play on the total in this one. Give me Colorado State +3, getting the job done against the number. All right, next matchup, it is going to be San Diego State taking on Fresno State, 11 o'clock Eastern start time. San Diego State's -8, totals 128. As good as the Aztecs are defensively, they're actually giving up nearly 71 points a game on the road. They're facing a Fresno State team who covered recently against the likes of San Jose State, UNLV, and Boise State. They also play some of the toughest home defense in the country. They allow only 60 points a game in the Save Mart Center. Jamar Baker, he has 22 steals defensively. He also leads the team in points. Meanwhile, teammate Isaiah Hill, he's scoring nearly a dozen points a game himself. Now, total-wise, Fresno saw 6 out of their last 9 home games stay under. Meanwhile, San Diego State saw unders recently against the likes of Utah State, Boise State, and San Jose State. Give me Fresno +8, under 128. And with that, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup. It is going to be Oregon taking on Washington, 11 o'clock Eastern start time. The Oregon Ducks are -5, totals 141. Now, the Ducks do have a losing record on the road, and they've been lackluster offensively in their travels. Oregon's averaging just 67 points a game away from home, and they've done a poor job shooting from long range in that same category. They're facing a Washington team who does do a real nice job guarding the three-pointer themselves. They're actually in the top 15 in the country in defensive three-point percentage. Kean Brooks, he also has 16 steals and 33 blocks defensively. Now, Brooks is currently the team's leading scorer on offense as well. He's dropping nearly 18 points a game. When it comes to the total, Washington saw unders recently against the likes of Washington State, UCLA, and Arizona State. Meanwhile, Oregon went 4-3 to the under in their last 7 on the road. I'm going to lean toward Washington +5, under 141. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap. I like Florida -9, under 137. Tennessee -3, under 147. Rhode Island +9, under 131. Fordham -4, over 132. St. Joe's +7, over 149. Richmond -1, over 137. Georgia Tech +7.5, under 141 and a hook. Virginia -16, under 127. Clemson -9.5, over 146 and a hook. Binghamton -5, under 133. Vermont -12, over 132. Bryant -2, over 154. UMBC -6, under 146. Navy -2, under 137.5. Marquette -5, over 161. East Carolina +10, under 142. Loyola Maryland +2, under 124. Longwood -4, over 135.5. High Point +2, over 140. Winthrop +8, over 134. Campbell -6, over 140.5. Chattanooga -7.5, over 144 and a hook. Citadel +16, over 150. Western Carolina -3, over 141. Wofford -2, over 137.5. George Washington -1.5, over 147. Oakland -14, over 143.5. Florida Gulf Coast +1.5, over 141 and a hook. Boston University -2.5, under 136. Army +13, over 145. UNC Greensboro +2, over 137. Belmont -17, under 148. Stephen F. Austin -6, over 137.5. Sam Houston State -12, over 124. South Florida -4, over 148. Indiana State -10, under 147. Murray State +1.5, over 140 and a hook. Bradley -9.5, over 127. Mississippi State -3 under 128. Northwestern +2 under 134. Drake -6 over 138. Iowa State -4 over 134.5. Texas A&M -3 over 141. UC Davis -11 under 136. St. Louis -5.5 over 145 and a hook. Grand Canyon -12 over 147. Seattle +4 over 136. UC Riverside -1 over 152. Cal Poly -2 under 117. UC San Diego +4 under 129. UC Santa Barbara -2 over 136. Colorado State +3 over 138. Fresno State +8 under 128. With my next and final free pick, give me the Washington Huskies +5 under 141.